Hi, Acadiana. Meteorologist Dave Baker here on a Wednesday afternoon. It's partly cloudy here in Lafayette, another very hot summer day, and those heat index values are getting up over 100 already, and they have since earlier today, where temperatures were running in the 80s. I think we had some heat index values south of LA 14 that were over 100 degrees as early as 9 o'clock this morning. So very, very summer-like, very sticky. We're going to talk about Tropical Storm Erin and the fact that it hasn't changed in strength a lot, and kind of explain why that's happening and why the forecast is a little bit different but still pretty much the same. Also going to look at a couple of other areas of the Atlantic that the National Hurricane Center has on its radar. And we're also going to go back in time and talk about a very powerful hurricane that hit the United States 21 years ago today. So first, let's go outside. 91 is the current temperature here in the hub city. We have partly cloudy skies, but it feels a lot more like 101 thanks to those dew points that have been running in the 70s here this afternoon. Humidity at 56%. Winds are currently out of the southwest at 5, and the pressure right now is at 29.98. On the radar, really most of the action has been kind of over Cenla here. Going to go ahead and grab the Fort Polk radar. And you can see that we've got some showers there east of the 49 corridor there, southeast of Alexandria into parts of Rapides Parish, right there on the border of Avoyelles. And some of that sneaking there along I-49 over the northern part of Evangeline Parish, too. As we look a little bit farther to the south, we've got some coastal action here. Not a lot considering the amount of moisture that is out there today. We've got a few more scattered storms here right along the coast there at Terrebonne and St. Mary parishes, and then over toward Lafourche as well. And then we've got some bigger rains that were going on over the Mobile area during the overnight period. They had some flooding issues there. But there is still a lot of tropical moisture that's in place, and that's going to keep at least the better chances for showers and thunderstorms in the forecast. There's a bigger picture. There's also kind of a trough that stretches there from the Arklatex back down into central Texas, and that will also be a focal point for some showers and thunderstorms. So looking outside, not a bad day here in the hub city. And the rest of Acadiana, we're looking at partly cloudy skies and some pretty hot temperatures. Traveling not much of an issue right now. Wanted to go back in time. Many of you might remember Hurricane Charlie. This was a really interesting type of storm that was forecast to make landfall along the Florida coast. It did make landfall there right around Punta Gorda, Florida, Port Charlotte area, Fort Myers, kind of that southwest Florida region on this date back in 2004. There were a lot of folks that evacuated for this storm, but there was also a lot of folks that stuck around during this storm as it really ramped up from a minimal Category 3 hurricane when it was crossing over Cuba to nearly a Category 5. It made a landfall with winds at 150 miles per hour. One of the things that was quite interesting about this is not just the rapid intensification right before it made landfall, but the size of the eye wall. The eye was only a few miles wide as it made landfall, so the worst of these hurricane force winds that were, over 120 or 130 or up to 150 kind of constrained to just within about 6 or 7 miles from the center, and then you had the winds really drop off. So it was almost like a large tornado as it rolled there over southwestern Florida. Again, Hurricane Charlie was a Category 4 hurricane, peaked winds at 150 just before landfall as it came into southwestern portions of Florida. And by the way, if I remember correctly, let me see if I can look this up again real quick, but this was part of the 2004 season where we had 4 different hurricanes hit the state of Florida. Francis, Ivan, and Jean were the other hurricanes that made landfall in Florida back in 2004. That was a rough year for the Sunshine State. Looking out at the 7-day graphical tropical weather outlook, we've got a new little area there right near the Yucatan. We kind of touched on this yesterday, more of a tropical wave that was bringing some heavy downpours to parts of Honduras. But now, at least the National Hurricane Center has put a little X there, so a little bit of a chance. Maybe we could see some development over the southwestern part of the Bay of Campeche within a couple of days. Right now, not a great chance, and As far as this coming close to Louisiana, it looks like this is going to go ahead and drift westward over toward the Mexican coast. The little low that's off of Nova Scotia, not looking too interesting today. Still an X there, but not expecting any development. And then, of course, we've got Tropical Storm Erin that's out in the middle part of the Atlantic, which is forecast to still be a major hurricane. And some of the forecast tracks take it just a little bit too close to some of those northern islands. So looking at the U.S. satellite, again, we still have a tropical wave that's in place here along the northern Gulf Coast. That should provide us with enough moisture. Of course, over the last couple of days, we've had all this moisture in place over southern Louisiana, but we haven't been able to really trigger things to go down as there's been a layer of dry air. So even though we've got an extremely moist and unstable atmosphere, it looks like things have been underperforming over the past couple of days. Then I want you to pay attention down here to the Yucatan Peninsula. This is another area that we're going to watch. This was on the coast of Honduras yesterday. It's going to be moving overland and eventually kind of coming out here into the Bay of Campeche, where we could have some slow development, although that's not too likely. And as far as the rest of the Gulf waters, not bad. Winds are going to be out of the west, southwest, or southwest today, about 5 to 10 knots, and seas running about 1 to 2 feet. Pretty day over in Panama City. This time around, a little bit grayer over in Orange Beach as you get closer to that little tropical wave. Had some rain on the camera yesterday at Dauphin Island. That looks like it's cleared up a little bit more today. Cocodrie, a pretty day, although there are going to be the showers and thunderstorms firing up with the afternoon sea breeze and more of the same as we look out to the west over toward Texas. So that little wave that was there over Central America, again, has kind of moved inland. It's yesterday was kind of right about in here, and today it's right over here. So that's going to go ahead and continue to move on toward the west, bringing some heavy downpours to the Yucatan, northern parts of Belize as well. Out in the Caribbean, things are a little bit quieter. We've got some Saharan dust that's moving out there. Another tropical wave approaching the Windward Islands right now. That's going to bring a few widely scattered showers. And then, of course, out in the middle part of the Atlantic, we've got Tropical Storm Erin, and we've got a couple of other decent tropical waves that are working their way off of the African coast. Nothing looking super interesting right now, but over the next couple of days and couple of weeks, we've got a series of waves that are going to come over the coast of Africa and move out into the Atlantic Ocean. So any of those could be contenders as we go through the next several days. You can kind of see some of that action out here in the eastern part of the Atlantic. Little wave coming here, another wave over here. There's actually another one that's kind of off the screen here, a little bit farther off toward the east. So we're going to see that parade of waves coming off the African coast, which is normal as we get into the middle part of August. So let's focus our attention on Erin. And again, it hasn't strengthened any. It still has a really good structure, at least at the surface, but the convection around that has been a little bit difficult. Looks like there's a little bit of shear coming in from the east or the northeast, so some of the convection is kind of offset to the left side of the center of circulation. Over the next couple of days, it's going to be also moving into a much more moist atmosphere and also some higher sea surface temperatures. So as it moves into that area a little bit farther toward the west, it'll have a better chance for development. So the National Hurricane Center's forecast still calls for it to be a hurricane by maybe sometime tomorrow, or rather on Friday, and then a major hurricane as we go into the weekend. Notice the cone, though, does touch some of the northern Virgin Islands there, and then going over to near Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. Folks that are there, including folks along the southeastern Bahamas, really need to pay attention to this, even though you may not be in the cone. You're very close, so do continue to monitor that, especially if you live out there in some of the islands. And as far as the intensity guidance, most of the models take it up to hurricane force, some a little faster than others. You got a couple of the models that are getting it up to hurricane strength within 2 days. That's pretty close to what the National Hurricane Center's forecast calls for as well. And then you got a few of these that are going up to a major hurricane, somewhere about 3.5 to 4 days out. With the conditions that are in the path of where Erin is supposed to go, it would be more likely that you're going to see some intensification over the next couple of days. Computer models as far as track, still pretty much on top of each other, which is good. That helps with the forecast, lets forecasters become a little more confident in the forecast, especially when you've got several different models that are suggesting the same type of path with something rotating around a big ridge of high pressure that would be out over the eastern Atlantic. When you look at the ensembles, though, again, between now and maybe day 3 or 4, as you get north of Puerto Rico, everything is pretty much stacked on top of each other. Remember, the ensemble suites show something a little bit different. Rather than what we showed you here, where there's a whole bunch of different models giving their absolute solution, this is actually just one model running over and over and over again, and all of the extra lines you're seeing are the what ifs. What if something changes somewhere within the forecast? So that's why you get this a little bit more of a variable farther down the road. Yes, there are some lines that sneak their way over toward the Bahamas and even the east coast of the United States, and a couple of them that go way farther to the east, but the bulk of the lines are close to that average there. So that is why the forecast shows from the National Hurricane Center more of a turn around that ridge of high pressure. Same goes for the Euro Ensemble Suite. Again, this is only the Euro model that runs over and over and over again. There's just a few tweaks in it here and there for the what ifs, because sometime you get a little change in your forecast. So if you've got one point that's wrong, then all the rest of the points following that are going to be wrong as well. So that's why the ensemble models are good to look at to see some of the variables, some of the what-if situations. Fortunately, it looks like most of the lines are going to stay away from the U.S. East Coast. Doesn't mean that folks along the East Coast should let their guard down yet, but it is looking a lot more promising that we're not going to have an East Coast strike. But you still see on the Euro, some of those solutions are really close to the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. So the folks out there on the island still need to pay very, very close attention. So let's go to the deterministic models. And again, the difference between the two is the deterministic models is basically just one solution. It just says, this is what's going to happen. It's kind of like when you look at your phone and it says that it's going to rain at 3 o'clock. Now, we all know that it might not rain at exactly 3 o'clock, but that's what a deterministic model would do. More of what we would call the ensemble model would be an example of, well, we think there's a 70% chance that it will rain sometime this afternoon, which gives you a little bit more leeway on your forecast. Still means it's probably going to rain, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to do it right at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So these models here basically just give us one solution, while the ensemble models give us a whole variety of solutions. So let's go ahead and forward this here as we get into the weekend. You can see there's some strengthening there. This is on Saturday morning, and then now we're starting to get into Sunday, and you see how the low is pretty close there to the Virgin Islands. So even though it's not a direct hit, there's going to be some gusty winds and probably some large swells that would be making their way toward the Virgin Islands as well as areas over toward Puerto Rico. As we go farther out into the early part of next week, the Euro indicates additional strengthening, maybe becoming a major hurricane off the coast of the United States, and then making that curve off toward the northeast. Gets pretty close there to Newfoundland as it kind of moves its way off toward the northeast. So we'll take this out to the full 10 days, and you can see it makes that loop all the way around. Maybe another little wave out here in the middle part of the Atlantic, but not as active as what we were looking at this time yesterday. So let's go ahead and roll this back once again to today at this time, and now we'll look at the Euro model. And the Euro model is basically showing that low pressure area, which would be Erin, taking very similar track to what we would see with the Euro model. And again, very close there to the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico as it starts to intensify. And very similar to the Euro model, the GFS also has significant strengthening here. Bermuda's going to have to watch out for this as well. But then as we get out to the 10-day period, you can see that that thing is screaming its way off toward the northeast. So the GFS solution is about the same when it comes to the strength of this tropical system, but the speed is a lot faster than what we saw with the Euro model. So let's just, for fun, look at the Canadian, and again, very similar. This one's a little bit farther to the south, maybe a little closer to the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. Very similar to the first two models. You see a little bit more intensification as it starts to make that turn, which would be the middle part of next week. And then by the time we get into the end of this run going into next weekend, you can see it's moving off toward the northeast, and in its wake, maybe another two lows that could be moving out into the Atlantic Ocean, which is typical for this time of the year. Rolling it all the way back, let's go back with the icon. Again, you watch Erin move across, and again, just like the GFS, this is why we're pretty confident with the forecast. is because all of our models are generally in agreement with the track, and they're pretty much in agreement when we're going to be seeing a little bit more intensification. Now, the Icon model out 7 days gets pretty close to the Carolina coast as a major hurricane, but you can see that it's already starting to make that turn, and then hopefully as high pressure settles in over the Atlantic, it will pull that out to sea. But the Icon model doesn't go quite out as far as the Euro and the GFS does, so we can only go out 7 days here, but the consensus is that this is going to be passing just to the north of the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, get a lot stronger as it passes over toward the Bahamas, and then before it makes its curve back out to sea, it could possibly become a major hurricane out in the Atlantic Ocean. Good news bad news is it's going to be continuing to move into much warmer waters where it would have the better chances for development, and also maybe some higher heat content too. Maybe they're north of Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and then over toward the Bahamas, you got a little bit more heat content. So if it can tap into that and the wind shear isn't too bad, it'll probably have a better chance for some development. Right now, right around that low, it is starting to battle some wind shear. At the same time, it's moving off to the west at a very, very fast clip. I think 17 or 18 miles per hour is its westward movement. So it's hard for a lot of these storms to really start to develop around the center as it's making that forward movement so quickly. And then at the same time, we're in a high wind shear environment. So a little bit farther down the road, I think we'll see it moving into more of a less wind shear environment, plus those warmer waters and a moister atmosphere. And that is why we think we're going to see a little bit more intensification here over the coming days. Real quick look at the global tropics hazard outlook before I let you go. Week 2 and week 3, this was issued yesterday. This is the first time we're seeing it today because it comes in after Let's Talk Tropics. It does keep the Atlantic somewhat busy, starting this time next week and then going on through the 26th. And then this third week, believe it or not, is already starting to go into September. Where is 2025 going so quickly? But it does at least keep some activity in the central and western portion of the Atlantic going into week 3, which I would expect as we get closer and closer to the peak of the hurricane season, which is September the 10th. Fortunately, nothing right now to worry about for the Gulf. We will watch that little ripple that's there by the Yucatan, but at this point, I'm not expecting any development there. But like I said, we'll go ahead and keep an eye on it just in case. Well, I hope you enjoy Let's Talk Tropics. If you do, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also turn on those notifications. And remember, you can hear my forecasts on Big 102.1, Planet Radio 106.7, and Freedom 95.1. Also, follow my social media pages for any updates on Erin, or if anything else wants to sneak up and put a yellow X out there on the 7-day outlook. You can find that on Facebook and X. And of course, thanks to everyone who's already subscribed to Acadiana Weather Today right here on YouTube. I'm meteorologist Dave Baker. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you on Thursday. Have a good one.